All right, good Monday morning, everybody. I am back with another agent call review. I'm going to do another fun live one, this time with Mr. Luke. As I say every single Monday, this is something everybody should have their mentor do for them. No matter whether it's a good call, bad call, it doesn't matter. It is very important to know what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong so you can always be doing what's right. So, as always, do me a favor, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, drop a comment down below what you guys think. Maybe say hi to Luke. At any rate, we're going to go ahead and kind of get into this. So, whenever it comes down to it, we actually were reviewing this call. We were kind of going over some of the details, and I realized that this really would be a great opportunity. That way, you guys can reap the benefits of how to actively listen.
All right. So just to verify a couple things, I have your email address is yahoo.com and beneficiary of your wife.
Correct.
Okay, perfect, perfect. And can you tell me a little bit about how long you've been looking into options?
A little bit. We I belong to they got a insurance company they work with, and I'm 100% sure that I got a policy from them, and then I wasn't seeing anything from them, so I called them. This has been a couple of years ago, and they said, "Oh no, you ain't got a policy." Well, where the hell did it go? It's supposed to be direct taken out, you know. And they said,
Mm-hmm.
"Well, you don't have one." So now, if I would have had it, it'd have been nice. And now, I'm looking around, and at my age, the price is kind of steep. You know what I mean? Kind of pissed me
Right.
off, them people. So I've been looking around a little bit.
Okay. And so far, people have just given you prices that are just way out of your price range, I guess.
Oh shit, yeah. You're in the
Okay.
insurance business, man. I'd be lying if
Yeah.
I said no. I mean, if you'd have did it, let's say 10 years ago, or you got it at a much cheaper price, and it would have carried on that way. Now,
Mm-hmm.
when you go out here blind, feel like I'm getting raped, so to speak. And it's my fault too. I should have been a little bit up on it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. The sad thing is we learn a little late sometimes, and we can't take
Oh
back the
yeah,
past, right?
yeah, yeah. These insurance company that I was using, I don't know where they come from. You know, I've been with them for. I'll tell you a story. I got car insurance. I've been with them 10, 12 years, 15 years, something like that. And I got two vehicles, one new and one a little older, and I keep full coverage on them. And it was $1,457 last year or year. That's what I've been paying. Hell, they cranked it up to 2,800 and something this year.
Really? Did they tell you
Yeah,
why?
yeah. I talked to another. I changed insurance companies, and that guy said, "Well, you're lucky they said something." Their problem was that, geez, there's a lot of tornadoes and flooding and stuff down in Texas and all around, and we had to pay out a lot of money. And what the hell's that got to do with me? You know,
Right. What
I
the
mean,
hell's
I'm
that
not
got to
trying
do
to.
with the price of bananas in China, right?
Yeah, I understand, and I explained,
Several good things that you did here throughout the call, or here in the beginning of the call, like you should. But as we discussed before, it is actually almost 10 minutes before you get to the introduction section. So it's really important to get to the introduction, usually within the first couple minutes, maybe 5 minutes max. So one of the perfect opportunities to interject was right before he went into his story about car insurance. Okay. I would have interrupted and said, hey, so before we get too far into it, I just want to let you know, make sure you know exactly who I am, and this, that, and the other. And then you go into the introduction. So one of the awesome things is this guy is telling you everything. So he's practically an open book. So, which is awesome. Makes it very easy to get information. Um, Now, when it comes to the beginning of the call, um, you verified two pieces of information. Very, very important. As always, we want to make sure that we're verifying two pieces of information. Like I said, this guy is an open book, so you didn't have to ask much. But one of the things that I did notice is the active listening. Okay, so we already know this. We've had Luke and I were discussing this earlier, and that's what made me want to actually do this as a review. When he's talking about receiving higher prices or that insurance is so costly and this and that, the better way to handle that is, okay, so what exactly have they been showing you? So you ask that, so that way you try to find out if they're dealing in reality or if they are out in fantasy land thinking they're going to get $2 million for $10. So you want to make sure that you're getting ahead of the objections. So we're going to skip ahead here. Total length of the call is actually about 35 minutes. It really probably could have been about 10, because the better way to handle this would have been, so roughly, what have you been being told? And when he tells you, well, I've been getting 20,000 for $120 a month. Okay, perfect. Then what we do is, easiest way is, hey, so roughly about how old are you? You find out their age. Once you've got their age, then you go straight to toolkits, start punching in their information, and see, without even any health details, if he's perfectly, I mean, literally absolutely nothing wrong with him, and you're getting back the lowest rate is $120, you might as well cut it off right there. Or at least start digging into it at that point of, well, what is his real intentions, right? So as we get further into this, you find out that he's got work insurance, and that he knows it's going to end. So when he's talking about that, you want to make sure to really press on that. So obviously, Mr. Jones, you understand that work insurance isn't always going to last forever. So that's why you want to make sure you have your own personal plan. Is that right? And you really punch in on that drives the need or the why that much more, right? Because if he retires, he's going to have nothing. So you also know that whenever you retire, you're probably going to be a little bit older, and that just means that whatever we talk about today is going to be more expensive tomorrow. Does that make sense? Right? So you really let them know that you start to create that urgency. So you want to create that urgency for them, so that way when it comes to the quote, they feel the urgency of, well, it may be too high or it may be more expensive than what I really want, but I need to do this now before it gets too much more expensive. You see? So when now again, as we get into the call, that's one area where you could really like push some hot buttons to create the urgency. Um Further on into the call, there's a few other, minor details, but the really big thing is when he starts talking, right here in the beginning, when he starts talking about seeing too much, you run the rates, you find out that he's only looking for, he's been looking at 20,000 is too much, and you find out that that's really in line. The perfect question to ask is, Mr. Jones, whenever it comes down to it, if 20,000 is too expensive for you, or you can't afford 20,000, then are you just not going to get anything? And if his answer is, well, yeah, I ain't going to spend $120 on 20,000. Okay. So does it make sense to have more, to have some coverage rather than no coverage? Because once you retire, you're essentially going to have no coverage. So you press that hot button. So when you ask that question, and if his response is, Well, I'm not that worried about it. If it's going to be that much, if it's going to be that expensive, then I'm just not going to worry about it. My guess is that's the type this guy is. The reason why I say that is because you heard him already starting to complain about the insurance companies and how expensive they are. And well, you're an insurance guy, right? He's thinking you're just out to stick it to him and get him for more money. So that's the active listening that you have to be doing on every single call. Not everybody is it as big of a deal to catch all these little nuances, but it's really huge for a guy like this because instead of a 35-minute call, it could have been a 10-minute call, maybe even a 5-minute call. Before we kind of cut things off, I do want to get into his objection here in the end.
So the first one I'm going to start off with is 20,000 in coverage.
Yeah.
Okay. And that particular coverage would come up to a rate of $122 a month. And then I also brought up 15,000 in coverage, which would run $92.15 a month. And just because you did say that you were considering cremation, I have 10,000 in coverage for a total of $62.29 a month.
Okay.
Okay. You got all those, or do you need me to go over them again?
Yeah. No, I got it.
Okay, one thing that I know we already covered, but I want to cover here, and that is when you're giving them the prices, tell them to write down 10, 15, 20,000. So that gives them the visual of what the coverage amounts are. And if they've got a problem, occasionally you'll run into somebody who's like, "Oh, I'm only going to get 20,000." Now you start to get that objection out. Rather than you give them all in one lump sum, you want to get that objection that there's just not enough coverage there. So really important, give them the 10, 15, 20,000. And then once you give them those three options, that's when you come back around and you say, okay, so for 10,000, it's going to be X amount. 15,000 is going to be X amount. Now, the other thing is you asked me earlier, would I give them the 20,000 first or would I give them the 10,000 first? It's a great question because there is some psychology behind it. I don't always do it the same. It depends on who I'm talking to. So if I'm talking to somebody who's been really clear about their budget, but they've talked about really trying to save money, I'd like to start actually with the 20,000. So they hear that bigger number first and it kind of gets them pumped up. And then they hear these lower amounts. Oh, well, I really want the 20,000. Doesn't always work, but I sometimes I'll do that. Now, if I'm talking to somebody who has already been talking about getting higher amounts, say they've already been talking about getting 20,000, 30,000, then what I'll do is I'll start with the lower amounts because psychology tells you that when it comes to when someone who is very focused on getting a higher amount, they hear a lower amount first, it's not such a shock of, oh my gosh, that's so high. You see? So it just really depends. I would say the pick one way and just do it the same all the time until you start to figure out who is what flavor.
Okay, perfect. So, when it comes down to it, out of all these, which one would make the most sense to get approved?
20 maybe.
20? Okay.
Is this going
So
to
do
go
you
up
feel
there
like-
if you got more, right? It's definitely
It
gonna go
would,
up.
yeah. Yeah. If you got more coverage than 20,000, it would go up in cost.
Okay.
It might be an option for you since you are in relatively good health. It may be an option to get a small term life policy if you wanted to just ensure you have extra coverage on top of the whole life, but that is entirely up to you.
Okay.
with that being said, if we were to get approved today, $122 a month, you feel like you can afford that and it wouldn't take food off the table, or do you want? Because I can go up and down by 1,000. So if you need me to, I can adjust it down from the 122, but still maximize the amount of coverage that you'd like to have.
Okay.
Do you feel like I went into too much detail there?
Yep, that's exactly right. So, way too much detail. No sense in talking about getting another policy. Let's just focus on exactly what the task is at hand, and that is getting coverage right now. If he's concerned about price, he's not going to want to spend more money to get a term policy. And the other thing is most likely this guy probably shouldn't even be looking at a term policy because he's probably going to outlive it because he's healthy. Now, if he flat out said, "Luke, I want a $20,000 whole life and I want a $50,000 term," then don't argue with him. But that is clearly not what he's saying. So, by giving him so much information, I guarantee you he's got a whole bunch of things rolling around, and the more things that's rolling around in their head, the less likely they are to buy. So it's super, super key to keep it short and sweet and down to the point. So make sure that you say, okay, so that one makes the most sense. It's not going to take any food off the table. And then then we're going to get the objection that we're looking at. But you don't want to go into all the extra detail. It's okay, just to be clear, it's actually okay to say, well, I can move the needle by 1,000, but you do that before, not after they make the decision, right? So you do it before. Okay, so these are the amounts. You got 10,000, 10,000 such and such, 15,000, 20,000, so forth and so on. And then you say, now, if any of those are in an issue, you just let me know. I can actually move the needle by 1,000. But that's only if you're feeling like you've got somebody who could kind of hem haw about the rate, right? And he very well could. So it's okay to say it there, but after he's picked it, wrong time to say it, because now it's, well, maybe I should move it, maybe I should talk to my wife, maybe I should talk to my kids, maybe I should go kick my tires a little bit.
Yeah, I talk to my wife and stuff first before I do anything.
Okay.
See what she thinks. She kind of helps with the finances.
The bill pays.
Yeah.
Okay. And what kind of what kind of argument do you think she would have if you got something like this in place?
Okay. So anything from here, he is just filling you full of crap. But I will say that is actually a good question, right? Like, so I would ask it in more of a like, are you crazy, or is your wife crazy type situation, meaning, so you think that your wife would actually have a problem with you getting coverage to make sure she doesn't have to come out of pocket for your passing? So you kind of ask it in like, are you stupid? I don't mean be condescending or be rude to him, but it is kind of silly that you want to talk to your wife about it. You've been thinking about it. You haven't liked prices, this, that, and the other, and you're still saying that you got to talk to your wife about it. Are you really ever going to pull the trigger? But again, that is a good question to ask. Just maybe ask it in a little more of a, are you silly way? And then the concern I have with where we're at is this guy was basically telling you every indicator of where he was going to end up, which is right where we're at. And that is, he's got to talk to his wife. What do you think the reason is why he has to talk to his wife?
The price. Early on, he had indicated that I'm potentially a piece of crap life insurance salesman. That potentially I'm just another salesman trying to take him through an industry that costs a lot of money. And it would have been more beneficial to ask him the question, so what exactly have you been hearing? And so that way I could get that price and I could know what I'm dealing with. And then I could have spent an additional, like you said, 20 to 30 minutes with another prospect and not a suspect.
Yep, and at least you get the objections right up front. The sooner you get the objections, the less likely they are to rear their ugly head at the end, before you're trying to get into an application. So, my take. Whenever it comes down to it, I don't see any issue if you spend an hour with a client, as long as that hour means you went through an app or two or three or four, and not you spend an hour trying to talk them into doing something when you didn't handle the objections in the right area. Always remember, being proactive is better than being reactive, especially when it comes to objections. Another thing to add is whenever it comes to active listening, or actively listening to the client. That is so unbelievably key. Let's explain what actively listening means. To actively listen is to hear what somebody is saying and use that information to actually help them make the best decision or to help you position things in the proper way. So in this case, actively listening means when he's telling you that that he's talked to some people and the prices are too high, when he's telling you that he doesn't really, or he's giving you the impression that he doesn't really like insurance companies because they're too expensive, when he's telling you that he just really hasn't found anything. All of these are key indicators of he's had conversations and there's a problem. You need to figure out what that problem is and see if you can even address it. Look, we're not here to make up rates. Nobody can make up rates. We're not here to position it. We're not here to make a fart smell like roses, right? Like, we're here to give you the product, tell you what the product is, and help you find the lowest price for that product. But we're not going to turn it into a magic pony, right? So just remember, that is one thing that will explode your sales, is if you actively listen. You don't have to respond within the finding, but you have to listen and record that information so that way you can use it throughout the call. So overall, there are some really good points you have throughout the call. The biggest disadvantage, or the biggest critique that I would have, is that it's just too long for somebody who you could have made a very short call out of. I want to let everybody know it is really important that if you've got somebody who's a talker, you have to gracefully and respectfully interrupt them. So, really important to do that. But with that said, guys, I hope you guys found this helpful. If you did, like I said before, drop a comment down below. Give Luke some love. He is trying really hard to up his game and get to the point of top sales. Matter of fact, you know what? If you guys would do me a favor, drop a fire emoji down below in the comments if you made it this far. Guys, we'll see you in the next one. Thanks, Luke.